Labą dieną dar kartą ir ačiū visiems susirinkusiems į Blue Bridge organizuojamą webinarą. Aš esu Karolis Mikalauskas, infrastruktūros sprendimų vadybininkas. Na, o šiandienos tema Every AD is a privileged AD. Kiekviena paskyra yra privilegijuota paskyra, kiekviena paskyra yra svarbi ir privalo būti apsaugota. Iš tiesų, šis webinaras tai vienas iš daugiau šiuo metu planuojamų vykti renginių kibernetinio saugumo tema, kuriuos kartu su savo partneriais organizuoja Blue Bridge. Na ir remiantis NIST, JAV nacionalinio standartų ir technologijos instituto sistema, norime jums padėti įsivertinti, kada ir kokius veiksmus turėtumėte atlikti, norint pažinti savo organizacijos pažeidžiamumo ir atakos silpnasias vietas, padėti suprasti, koks tinkamiausias būdas būtų apsisaugoti ir kokių veiksmų reikėtų imtis, norint proaktyviai stebėti ir turėti tinkamiausius įrankius ir žinias reaguoti sėkmingos kibernetinės atakos atveju. Remiantis NIST modeliu, antrasis saugumo užtikrinimo etapas - apsauga. Vienas iš svarbiausių kurios užtikrinimui kertinį vaidmenį atlieka privilegijuotos prieigos valdymo sprendimai. Dar kitaip trumpiniu vadinama tiesiog PAM. Šiuolaikinio PAM galimybės leidžia užtikrinti apsaugą nuo slaptažodžių bei jautrių duomenų nutekinimo, stebėti privilegijuotų naudotojų veiksmus ir turėti jų atsekamumą. Taip pat palengvinti realų organizacijos slaptažodžių politikos įgyvendinimą. Na, o pristatymo metu prašau jūsų dėmesio, aktyviai užduokite klausimus pranešėjui, chat langelyje lietuvių arba anglų kalbomis. Tikiu, kad tokių turite, na, o jei neturite, tai tikiu, kad pranešimo eigoje tokių atsiras, o pristatymo pabaigoje mes juos atsakysime. Taip pat webinaro pabaigoje nepabėkite, pateiksime nuorodą į klausimyną ir būtume dėkingi sulaukę jūsų atsakymų ir vertinimo. Na, o šiandieną pristatymą atliks Tomas Joniak, kuris atstovauja vieną iš pirmaujančių PAM gamintojų pasaulyje, Delinea. So, hello Thomas, how are you?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, whenever you're ready, you can start your presentation and the stage is yours.
Beautiful, thank you so much. So first off, I'd like to thank everybody for being here in this afternoon, and thank you, Blue Bridge, for hosting this webinar. So my name is Tomas Joniak. I'm a sales engineer with Delinea, and today I'm going to talk about every ID is a privilege ID, and kind of take you through a little bit of a journey and kind of show you how the solution, what is Delinea, and how do we fit into the security portfolio. So let's get started. So first thing in this slideshow I'd like to say is if you've never heard of Delinea, it's okay. But you may have heard of the two companies, Thycotic and Centrify. Both of them have merged and now become Delinea. So I will take you through this journey of what we are. Just a quick little 2 words about me. I am a sales engineer based out of Krakow, Poland. I represent the Central and Eastern European for the sales for the products and solutions. Before this, 3 years, I was with Cisco Systems. Prior to that, if I do go a little bit too fast, I do apologize. I lived most of my life in the US and I worked as a security engineer, architect, mostly around the security products and portfolio. So a lot of different kind of things. I have a few sessions, white papers on securities, and today it's a privilege to kind of talk to you about this. So one of the first slides that I'm going to kind of talk about is, this is one of my favorite quotes. And it's a quote about why I'm here and why this webinar and why are we kind of talking about this. The best security doesn't matter because the weakest link is going to be always the user, the privilege, right? It is said, and this is, you know, a lot of different surveys. You can go on Bing, you can go on Google and look at this up. People would sell their credentials for less than $1,000, right? I actually was able even to get it for $50. That's a different story. So this is kind of a nice segue into what we are going to talk about today. So I'm going to take you through this privilege management journey and what this actually is. So as you know, privilege management is about privileges, mostly passwords, anything that we can lock, anything that we can secure. So the first analog privilege and the kind of evolution of everything was paper-based passwords, right? We've all wrote it down on a piece of paper, put it underneath the keyboard, right? Sticky notes, we've all seen this. And that's basically the analog way. We've had default passwords on everything. We didn't really, right? Admin was on most of the routers, root admin, all sorts of different things. So that was the analog way, but there was no password rotation. There was no inventory for any of this. So the next phase kind of came to this. And this is, we call this the basic. And now the basic is, right? We have systems, we have vaulting, right? Password managers, KeePass, LastPass. Well, LastPass is no longer there. You've all heard the stories. But again, those are the vaults. Those are the password vaults. But they still weren't able to provide us more of the information that we needed. They weren't able to provide us the password rotations. They weren't able to provide us full audits and full every kind of perspective across the entire infrastructure. So that was the basic, right? We were able to do just enough, but we were still missing a few things. So then it comes the next phase, right? Above the threshold of what do we consider security posture nowadays? Right? We now need to be able to do password hiding, zero trust approach on password, right? Passwordless access. That's the new thing that you see from big vendors like Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet, and all the different ones. Passwordless access, right? Certificate, zero trust. We need to be able to do privilege elevation, local admin rights removals. Those are the things that is the advanced theory. So that's kind of the journey. And then there's one more and the final kind of step from all of everything, and that is the proactive decision. We all love automation, right? ChatGTP, everybody is talking about it. But that's automation. That's how do we automate everything? How do we put governance into it? How do we say, okay, our DevOps use the proper infrastructure. They use the proper secrets. So we need to be able to have full compliance across the entire board. And that's basically kind of the journey of privileges, passwords, or basically any secrets. So today I'm going to start off very simply. We're going to get started with some use cases. What are customers talking about? What are they looking for? And this is something I've heard all across this region. Everywhere I go to different customers, partners, events, and everything, these are the things that people talk about. So the first thing you always hear is, I need a vault. I just need something that is, I have LastPass today, but it's not good enough, right? I have KeePass. It doesn't do rotation. I can't do proper sharing. So I have some vault today, but I'm just not happy with it. It's something we got, it's just not there. So I basically have a spreadsheet still. I'm still in the analog days. We want to be able to rotate passwords. We want to be able to manage service accounts. Right. So if you're a big organization, even small, you probably have a lot of service accounts that connects all your vendors, that connects all your services, SaaS applications, and everything else. We need to be able to do it. So here is Secret Server. And I'll talk about the products and solutions a little bit later, but these are just some of the use cases that what do people talk about? So biggest security nowadays is, everybody's talking about how do we do compliance? Well, NIST 2.0 basically got signed earlier this year, and it's going to be rolling out 2024. And in there, it's a nice keyword, MFA, right? MFA everywhere. I need MFA on switches. I need MFA on Windows. I need it from logging. So I have cybersecurity insurance, right? All of a sudden, it needs MFA because we need to get a discount. My auditors, let's say banking, hospitals, everything, PCI, all the compliances, they tell us, hey, we need MFA. So I need control access my Windows servers, my Linux servers, all the different privilege elevations, not just, hey, this is the admin account and you can do whatever you want, right? The wild, wild west. So we need to be able to lock everything down, be able to just give enough time, enough permissions to anybody. So MFI. And these are Server Suite, Cloud Suite. These are things I'm going to kind of talk about throughout as we go. But again, we have Linux and Unixes. We don't have just Windows. We're big organizations. We have Kubernetes. We have Dockers. We have everything, cloud, on-prem. We have AIX. We have FreeBSD. So how do we put and control all of that environment, right? AD can't do everything. We can't control AD on all of these machines. But, so we need to find some sort of solutions that are able to tell us that, hey, we have old systems and NIS, Network Information Services, that I need to be removed. How do we control Linux environments? So again, products I'll talk about, Server Suite and Cloud Suite, or I like to kind of shorten it and just call Server PAM. But then we have workstations, right? We have EDR systems. Probably every single one of us has some sort of an EDR system on our machine nowadays, but that's reactive, right? It does proactive scanning, it does proactive things, but it's very reactive. That means something's already on the machine where it reacts to the compromise. But we need to be able to lock privileges. We don't want everybody on every workstation to be able to do everything. So how do we lock down? So these are the key terms. I have Microsoft Labs today, right? Store workstation passwords. I want to control administrative access to workstations. I want to be able to control applications, whitelist, blacklist applications. But why? Because I don't want to be able to run administrative privileges on every single application. I don't want to do run as admin on my command prompt. I want to be able to just say, you are a DevOps, you should be able to do this within the guidelines. But this and this is outside your scope. So this is Privilege Manager for workstations, for laptops, for any kind of desktop that you need. We need to be able to control those environments. So Privilege Manager is a product that I'll talk about once we kind of go through everything. And then we have the most popular. Every single one of us probably has some sort of VPN. I think I'm probably up to 5 right now and that's not many, right? But these are just day-to-day basis. We have to connect constantly to the different VPNs, different customers, different partners, different kind of solutions. So remote access services. How do I connect without having a VPN connection and being able to connect every single time? I just need one application. I don't need access to the full server. Maybe it's not even good. I shouldn't give access to the whole server, right? We need to ask those questions. So these are the things that basically customers are talking about. I need to limit control over what they are able to do once they gain access to that server, right? We need to be able to tie this into some sort of Active Directory. We need to be able to say, I don't need a VPN for 2 applications. I have a contractor. I need to give him a job for basically 2 weeks to, let's say, Oracle database. They do the job. We record the session, and that's it. So again, VPN-less connection, remote access services. And then you hear customers all the time. Right now, it's very popular. I need a PAM solution. And at that point, it's basically any product or all products, depends on how the solution, what are the needs from the customers. So how does this Delinea and everything we bring to the table? What do we provide? So today, Delinea solution provides many different things, right? It's the different problems that customers have. There's many of them. I just listed few, and you probably can see that there's a lot more. As I said, I've been working in identity services on a network side for years, but this is a little bit different. This is not networking. This is identity services, privilege access. So the problem we want to solve with privilege accounts, what are we looking for as Delinea? When we come and talk to you, there are a few things we want to be able to say. Well, the number one thing that always everybody says is, well, we need to target hackers. Privilege accounts are the number one things that hackers look for, right? They're going to be able to say, we can find a domain admin somewhere on a workstation, somewhere on a server. And basically at that point, that's the number one thing for the hacker. Why? I don't like this, the answer, keys to the kingdom. I like to kind of say it's the keys to the hotel. And I'll explain this later. But again, this is the reason. Once a hacker gets some sort of access to a workstation, let's assume it's a standard user. Well, if you run standard typical application run as administrator, we can do basically hash. We can search for the hash. We can find a domain admin. We can find some sort of an admin account somewhere. And all of a sudden, we have access to the domain admin. And from there, you basically can move anywhere you want. So that's one of the things. Another one is overpresence. Well, overall presence means many different things. But We have privileged accounts everywhere. We no longer have a single password. I'm old. I started, well, let's just say, I'm not going to tell you the year, but I started a long time ago. Well, back then it was very simple. One account basically got you everywhere. You changed that account and that was it. There wasn't really much of an online presence. But nowadays, you have passwords on top of passwords. You have access. You have privileges, right? Do you know how many, a standard user, forget company, at home, how many passwords they have on average? So recently, I did a webinar, more of a kind of conference speaking, and I had to do this research. What is the average amount of passwords a standard person household, somebody like my wife who's not an IT person, would have? It's over almost 100 passwords, right? If you start thinking about it, bank accounts, right? Insurance logins, car logins, all the different things, Netflix's, Disney's, and all that stuff, stores, everything has a password nowadays. In IT, you probably can multiply that by 100. So it's easily equates to 3 times the number of employees. That's how many privileges we have. We have more accounts than we have employees. So we need to be able to limit that. What about the service accounts, right? Something we never talk about. Service accounts are, oh, we just create a service account for Fortinet because they just need to synchronize so that we can use AD across. But there is a lack of visibility in service accounts. We don't ever audit properly service accounts. Best case scenario, I went to a customer when I was in professional services, when I worked for a partner. And then this was, we deployed, this was ICE, Identity Services Engine 1.0. If anybody knows Cisco, you'll know this. That's the reason I'm bold. But anyways, I went to a customer, I deployed this product, and they wanted to see it basically, I wouldn't say production. You know, back then it was kind of like production was development, and it was all mixed. Well, they didn't like it. After 6 months of trying it, they said, well, this is not for us. It's too buggy. It's version 1. We'll wait later. I went back later, almost a year. And guess what? The service account and all the passwords and all the firewall rules, everything was there. We do not do a proper job of cleaning up everything. We don't manage this. Nowadays, it's a little bit better. We have automation, right? We run the script, it removes everything. We get more and more automated for the tasks, but also means we have less employees. So employees have to do more work. But that's the thing we have to be able to. How do we manage service accounts, manage that privilege? And then beyond IT. What is beyond IT? Basically everything. Social media accounts, IoTs, all that stuff that really doesn't have a person in front of it is just there, right? Our Windows 2000 servers that manage some sort of a computer in, for example, building management services, right? That control our temperature for the building. Do you think anybody really maintains that and updates it properly? As long as it works, right? We don't worry about it too much. A few years ago, there was a very popular hack where somebody got into one of those servers and then was able to go through the entire network. So we need to find IoT, anything beyond IT, we need to be able to make sure, because that is how our reputation for either us or for our company or for our vendors is going to be. So we need to control privileges across the board. So what does the modern PAM look like? So PAM enforces security best practices, right? And there are a few different things, and you're going to see this many times, different vendors, they'll kind of turn this around in different ways, but there are a few components we always have to look at. So the first thing that, we have to establish trust. For systems to enforce and authorize security policies, we have to be able to trust them. That's the first thing we need to do. Well, as soon as we trust them, we need to verify who that person is, or who that machine is, or what that service is, right? We need to be able to identify everything. We cannot say, oh, yeah, sure, you can have access to this. That's no problem. Once we do, we need to basically have contextual requests, right? It's important to have zero standing privilege. That's what that means. Zero trust is a new key term that everybody uses. It's kind of like cloud, right? But zero trust is something that we've always believed in when IT in the early ages, right? We only gave you access to what you needed. But as our organizations, as our companies grew, we kind of lost track of that, right? Our job roles might have changed. Our perspective on certain things might have changed. So we basically said, oh, okay, they're doing a great job, but let's give them more access. But then do you ever remove that access once their job is done? Do you ever control that? So we need to be able to audit everything. Secure admin environments, right? How many of us do we come into work and say, okay, do we have a proper admin environment? Do we have an AD control group? Do we know who has access to this on a daily basis? Forget daily, weekly. But why do I mention daily? Well, hackers don't really care if it's weekly or monthly or yearly or however, right? They're going to say, they're going to do their things, and it might be 0 day. It might be every 5 minutes. You're going to get DDoS. You're going to get some sort of a phishing email. You're going to get something. These are things for IT people and IT managers and CISOs to think about every single time. We need to make sure that our environments are controlled. And again, going back, we need to only provide access to the least privilege. If your job is to update the Apache on that Linux machine, or that FreeBSD or IIS updated, then that should be your only job. So how do we give them access to admin controls only for that, but not everything else? A lot of people say, well, we just give them a jump host and then they can get into it. But that means they still need to have some sort of a root account or some equivalent of it. So we need to make sure that they are always going to be least privilege with amount access to just do that specific task. Because if I walk into your company and you give me admin access, well, that means I can move laterally and go from every server, everything. And who knows, right? Put any scripts, do anything I want because I have keys. Well, the most important thing about Modem PAM is we need to audit everything. We need to record every session. We need to be able to say, okay, if something bad happened, because we know, right? 10 years ago, it was very popular. There was some IT company, and I can't remember. They said, we're going to stop all breaches. Yeah, unfortunately, that wasn't a good marketing term. You cannot stop breaches. You cannot stop the best security. Best security will never do that because we have humans, and human error will always happen. But as long as you audit everything, as long as you record the session, it's how fast can you recover? How fast can you lock everything? How fast can you make sure that you provide just enough access so if a breach happens, it's going to be controlled environment breach. It's not going to be access to everything. And most important thing that I always point out here, adaptive control, right? What does that mean? We need to change our policies. If something is working, can we make it better? Because the mental thinking that when I first started was, oh, my firewall is perfect. I don't have to touch it. Well, 6 months later, that may not be perfect anymore, right? We need to patch it. We need to make sure we do it properly. Adaptive control thinking. So we need to make sure always we learn from everything, even the good as well as the bad. So how do we take you through this journey? So really quickly, Delinea has come out through a few different things. And basically we say protect critical data, right? Discover and vault. What do we mean by that? Well, we want to make sure we secret management, privilege account discovery, session management, zero trust. This is discover and vault. Lock all the proper and all the protect critical data in it. That's basically the first phase. Second phase is secure endpoint devices. Elevate and enforce only when needed, right? Identity bridging, least privilege enforcement. Elevate privileges only when you need to. Don't give access to everything. Don't give them that admin account or their root account. The next one is manage your cloud access. I know in Eastern Europe, this is one thing I always, people tell me, we're not cloud ready yet. Well, certain people are not, but it's moving. The shift, more and more things are going to be cloud access. If you run Office 365, you are in a cloud, right? That's going to be there. If you run Microsoft products, it's going to be. So there are more and more things that are going to be cloud, I would say, adaptive. We need to say, we need to be able to secure that as much as our on-prem services. Yes, our critical infrastructure is now vaulted. our endpoints are protected, our cloud is done. So what else is there? There's one more pillar. Well, the most important thing, secure sensitive code. We keep forgetting, if we are an IT company, we are going to start doing automation. We're going to say we have some sort of non-human accounts, service accounts. We have DevOps. We run Terraform. We run Python scripts, right? More and more of this is happening. So we need to be able to also think about these solutions, the IoT perspective, as I call it. So we need to provision and decommission based on what we need. If we don't need this service account anymore, let's decommission it properly. Let's make sure it's not going to be a vulnerability 6 months from now. So that's how we take you through the journey. So what to expect from Delinea? Flexibility, right? Least intrusive possible, your architectural. We want to make sure that our solution is not going to change too much of how your infrastructure works. We don't want to basically rewrite the entire security. We want to make sure that our software is going to come in properly and be as not intrusive as possible. Your session launching capabilities, your SaaS IaaS, everything should be flexible. It should be seamless. Simplicity, right? Zero trust access doesn't necessarily mean complexity. A lot of people sometimes say, what's zero trust? I always think about it as, don't trust anybody. Just give them access to the lowest privilege and then start adding privileges based on what you need, right? Apply MFA everywhere. Add login, add privilege elevation, apply MFA at any single point that you want. You control your security policy still. We just provide you the tools that's going to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. And it needs to be easy, implement, and customizable. Zero touch, zero downtime upgrades, right? Visibility across. We want to be able to record, be able to provide you a full audit trail, session monitoring, be able to customize reports, dashboards, whatever you need for your tools. That's what Delinea is going to provide you with. All right, behavior analytics. If a user always logs in at a single time, Monday through Friday from 8 to 2 p.m., because let's say they don't work after 2 p.m., and all of a sudden they are logging in at, I don't know, 5 p.m. from, I don't know, USA. Well, something's wrong, right? We need to be able to alert. That user should not be in our systems. That user should not log in because maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe they're traveling, but automatic, we don't have to monitor this. We should have systems that are able to provide us that information. And resilience, right? High availability, disaster recovery, break glass capabilities, and hybrid architectural. That is what is to expected, right? Scalability across everything. So really quickly, for the next 5 minutes, basically 5 minutes, and I apologize, I'm going to just adjust my chair. I'm going to show you something very interesting, XPM. Now, I come from a firewall world, so you probably heard about next generation firewalls. I kind of like to think this is our next generation PAM, but it actually means extended PAM. But yeah, once a geek, always a geek. So I rebrand a few things myself. Everything has an identity, right? We talked about this. Your traditional PAM, everything's going to have some sort of an identity. But everything is expanding. Identity because of COVID, because of how we work from home, how we have VPNs, how we have remote accesses. Identities are across the board everywhere now. So we need to be able to identify everything. Why? Well, because you can say everything has some sort of a vulnerability nowadays. Camera system, our refrigerators, right? Let's say you use a personal computer that you didn't update the Chrome for, I don't know, 6 months. And all of a sudden there's a vulnerability in Chrome and you are one of those person that likes to save passwords in Chrome. If you remember last year in May, there was a very popular hack on that. So that's why I'm mentioning that. But beyond that, vulnerabilities are across the board. So we need to be able to extend our PAM solution, no longer in the traditional sense, but our PAM needs to be extended. So extended PAM now covers everything. It's no longer just within our corporation. We need to think about kind of the pillars I talked about earlier, right? We need to focus, vault everything, and then drive that all the way across. So another way that we basically say is foundation, right? Enhance and adaptive. So foundation are a few products, and I put the products in these folios, but I'm going to talk about the products because we do have only an hour, and I want to make sure we cover the products a little bit deeper. But this is kind of our phases. How Delinea sees a customer going through, right? We want to vault and discover using SQL Server. We want to be able to drive privilege elevation using clouds and server suite, right? Be able to control our endpoints and DevOps, and then automate and provide intelligence as the third phase. So if you're in phase one, if you have some sort of PAM and are looking for a solution, beautiful. But if you're in danger zone, you're going to be driven by governance, by compliance, by cybersecurity insurance, right? So NIST 2.0, all these things are going to start driving that. You're going to be almost forced to move into one of those. But you don't have to, right? You can always be. But remember, danger zone is the analog way. So first product I'm going to kind of cover a little bit is SQL Server. This is your traditional PAM in a sense of it extends into beyond just the traditional infrastructure. Why? Because it is an established vault. SQL Server is and was started as a pure vault. But we've added a bunch of tools to it. We've added, discovery accounts where you can automate and discover accounts as they are grown through your AD, as they grow through your Linux systems. As you add systems, we can discover all the different accounts that you want to be able to vault. The solution is on-prem or cloud. So if you're not a cloud friendly, or if you want to do a hybrid, you want to do one piece in the cloud and one piece on-prem, the solution is flexible enough to be able to give you everything. But all of a sudden, it can delegate access, right? Let's say you go on vacation and you hire a junior IT admin, and you want to give him access just in case something happens. You want to give him access to something. So we can delegate access to our routers, our switches, our servers, anything we want based on, for that time, premises. How does that work? You're not going to create a username for him. You can share the access to those devices for the time period that you're on vacation. As soon as you come back, that privilege is revoked. Automatic revocation, they don't have access. And the best part, at the end of every day, we can rotate a password, or at the end of every session. As soon as that person logs in and finishes their job, that password rotates, and they'll never be able to know what the password was. So we can manage all of the secrets. For us, we call SQL Server because privileges, passwords, it's too many. Secrets is anything that we can lock. The solution is very, very clean, right? We have a web portal that you can log into. You can also control it through APIs or directory services. So you can have access using different access into it or different systems. We layer MFA on top of it. So it's no longer just username and password. You will have to be able to put an MFA. Again, based if you like it or not. You don't have to provide it for everybody. But again, that's becoming the norm. And then with SQL Server is able to import and discover systems, session management, right? We can record anything we want, and credential management. We can rotate and control orderly. Everybody says, wow, that's very simple. And that's what it's supposed to be. The vault needs to be very simple, easy to deploy, easy to manage. So with SQL Server, you have out of the box almost over 80 reports where you will not have to learn anything day one. So if I walk in tomorrow and say, we're going to do a POC, I bet you by the end of this week, you'll already be able to run reports without thinking about what the reports. Easy to label out of the box. Again, it needs to be seamless. It doesn't, we do not try to put more work into your job. It needs to be something that is helping you control all the environments. Real-time alerts, SIEM integration, right? And PBA, privileged behavior analytics. We can monitor and control how we can give you data saying these users are using these systems and these are the policies that you should be working. So these are the things how SQL Server overview looks at. But with SQL Server, we have also remote access services. So remote access services, that's the VPN list, right? Yes. So without VPN, we can actually get into our environments. We can say you will have zero standing access it from anywhere because all it is just a web portal, and launch not a remote desktop, not SSH, but you can actually launch applications. You can launch, for example, let's say you have Splunk and you're hiring a contractor to create new dashboards for your Splunk portal. You can give them access just to the Splunk portal through remote access services. And they will not have access to anything else because their job is to do that. And the best part is you get to record what they do. Well, how's that help? Oh, all of a sudden, let's say the contractor after a weekend tells you, you know what, I did my best job and I'm billing you 40 hours, right? 8 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Well, you can go back to the recording and say, well, they didn't do anything on here. They were just clicking. They didn't do anything here. Well, you didn't do much. You can audit and control your contractors. It's not just VPN and you don't know what they're doing. It actually records all their sessions. So Delinea Remote Access Services is get work done, quick, easy, and secure. My favorite key terms to this, because there's no VPNs, there's no ACLs, there's no AD, because you can create local accounts and provide MFA and just say, hey, you have access to this application, even if the application is running on a server. So if you have Microsoft SQL Management Studio, you can provide them access just to that, not the entire server. Launch session, browse session, end session. Simple, easy. And the technology is very simple. Internal employees or third party basically go to the portal, they access the portal, and they access the services. That's how easy we wanted to make sure. It doesn't take, we need to call security and be able to open up ACLs to that server. Why is that a vulnerability? Because if I open up an ACL to a server, that means that contractor or that employee has access to the entire server, to that entire IP address. And that server runs multiple services. It doesn't just run one service. So if it runs IIS, it runs, I don't know, Oracle or something else, they have access to the whole server. They can also embed any, go to the browser, open up and surf the internet and do a bunch of different things. And how do I know this? Well, when I was younger, I used to do a lot of that. So I can tell you from experience that actually does happen all the time. So simple and powerful. Again, just kind of go through the graphics. I don't know why it flipped that, but I'll show you right now that remote access services basically will leverage your infrastructure. But it leverages also secret server. Our secrets are locked in the vault. Our remote sessions portal can leverage all of those secrets. So what is beautiful about that? We provide access. If they need access to a Cisco firewall or they need access to a Juniper switch or anything else, they can grab the secret for that time being to access that switch. And as soon as they're done, it will rotate the passwords. So what's going to happen is they'll never be able to know what the password was or the login or the IP, because they'll just be able to get into the Juniper, configure something, and then basically take them out. So it leverages this vaulting environment of secret server with our remote session. So can we connect, right? I mentioned web GUI, but we also have a connection manager. Connection manager is a hard client that you can install on Windows and Mac, where it's kind of like a, how do I put this? It's a all-in-one where you can see all your sessions. So if you're an administrator and you manage a lot of different connections and you work in different GUIs, different systems all the time, this basically manages all your sessions. It connects with Secret Server to basically know exactly. It is able to track, audit, record, centralize control of everything. So Session Manager is great for large, complex environments, right? Because if, for example, if I'm an IT admin back in my early days, I would have, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 sessions for SSH Linux. I'm a Linux kind of guy, opened up, and I was working on multiple different components, sometimes to the same server. But each session was recorded, each session. So Connection Manager is able to help us manage as admins. We don't have to. One thing admins sometimes don't like is a GUI portal to log into and launch a session from a GUI portal. Connection Manager is a hard client. You install it on the workstation, And from there, you can basically have access to what you need. But all that access is still controlled by secret server. So it provides a beautiful environment for you to work on. The perfect thing, one of the key benefits things is that we can create also workflows in secret server, right? So workflow is, let's say I'm an admin and I need to give access to the DevOps teams to be able to change some code, or to the security team or the wireless team. We can create a workflow that all of a sudden they have access, they can check out a password for about an hour, do their job, and all of a sudden we can close the workflow and a nice report and a full recording will be of all the work they did. Why is it also helpful? Well, what's the one thing in IT that we have to do before we do any system changes or upgrades? We have to create a backup plan, right? Rollback. If we record everything, we know exactly how to roll back because we can just reverse it. So all of a sudden we have a nice contextual data that says this is what was done. So if somebody typed that IP 112 instead of 122, we can see on the recording, hey, there's our mistake right there, instead of looking for a needle in a haystack. So Connection Manager is run multiple remote sessions. Credentials to remote sessions are all managed essentially, and basically switch between active sessions very easily. So it's kind of like a remote desktop with SSH combined into one. Privilege Manager. So one of the products I talked about, Privilege Manager is for the endpoints. So workstations, laptops. So this is an all-in-one tool to least privilege and application control. We control the applications on the workstations. This is a very popular because it does on Windows and Macs. It's very, if anybody's ever done anything on firewalls, you will understand this in 5 minutes. It's a whitelist, blacklist, top-down of applications that people can run as administrators or as privileged users, basically in another term, without constantly bugging IT and teams and saying, hey, I need to install a new version of Chrome, or I need to install, I don't know, some secure CRT or some application. Because we know that we can control where these applications are, how do we graylist anything, what kind of policies we should apply. It manages all the accounts, we define all the policies, and we can elevate as needed. Application is very seamless also. Privilege Manager endpoint is on-prem and cloud, and it can basically provide us dynamic policies, application control, and least privilege control. Again, with all of our tools, we are able to do reporting, log forwarding, full integrations of APIs, full integrations of third-party applications, and we can actually provide a very easy way to control applications. Now, one thing about it is integrations. Somebody asked me, well, what if it's an application that is unknown? So you can actually integrate this with, for example, VirusTotal, where you can actually look up the Shocky and say, hey, this is basically an application, or this is the signature. Does this match the application? Nope, the signature doesn't match. All of a sudden, the policy will state, you cannot install this application. So ransomware, right? That's the first thing everybody thought of right there. If we go to an email and we click on that PDF or we click on something, automatically scans, can we install that application? Is it going to be able to? We define the policies, what applications can install. Guess what? We cannot install ransomware application. Beautiful. That's how we get rid of it. So this is a very nice way to control applications on workstations because it's our first vulnerability. And again, very popular thing, 85% of cyber attacks start with compromised endpoint. So I'm not going to talk. Let's skip over to Server Suite and Cloud Suite just to make sure. Let me take a look at it. We're still good on time. Server Suite and Cloud Suite. So Server Suite and Cloud Suite, I like to call it Server PAM. It is to manage all of our Linux, Unix, and Windows systems, servers specifically. It is the zero trust best practice approach. So implements least privilege, it enforces MFA, and improves compliance. That's a lot, right? So one tool can do all of that. So Server Suite is on-prem. Cloud Suite is basically the name cloud, but together they form Server PAM. And together, they provide a very amazing tool, Active Directory bridging. If you've never heard of it, you can Google it. One of the companies that formed Delinea, Centrify, they were one of the leaders, founders of Active Directory bridging. There was 3 of them. And Centrify did this tool for longest, where they are able to install a tool on the Linux machines, FreeBSD, AIX, Solaris, all of these old school systems or new school systems, anything you can think of, where we can now all of a sudden use AD on Linux. So in my early days when I was a Linux guy, and we're talking about early 2000s, I would have hated this, right? Because Linux is basically, I don't want AD on my Linux. I don't want Microsoft on my Linux. Unfortunately, back then I had 2 Linux servers. So it was really easy to script certain things and be able to control it. Most organizations and companies nowadays have over 500,000 of servers. And if you have a username on every single one of them and you hire a new Linux administrator, it takes a while to put that user on every single one. But then people say, well, I have Red Hat. Red Hat is very similar where we can connect curveballs into it. Very true, but it cannot do recording. It cannot do full GPO. It cannot do privilege elevation, right? So there are a few things that it can't. So here we are, through Active Directory bridging, we are able to migrate and connect all the Unix into a full AD and be able to create a single sign-on, MFA, privilege elevation, and record. So you say MFA. So what are the use cases for MFA on these? So MFA everywhere, that's kind of how I like to say it, is that we are able to provide MFA and integrate this with, let's see, YubiKeys, SMSs, tokens, third-party authenticators, almost every single MFA thing that you can think of. But we don't do MFA just very simply at login, right? We can easily install an open source tool that can do MFA at login. So we do MFA at login, but we also do MFA at privilege elevation. What does that actually mean? So first off, let's login. We can provide you a phone, SMS, auth token, smart cards, security question, push notification, not on Windows, but also on pure Linux, Unix, Solaris, all of those systems. We can create MFA to log into these systems. Manage from a single system. So that single pane of glass, you don't have to go through and manage it from every single way. You can basically say, we now have MFA across all of our servers, managed by one policy. Why is it good to have one policy? Well, you have compliance. When your auditors come in, they want to see a compliance. So that's MFA login on everything, Windows, logins, all systems. But now privilege elevation. So what is this privilege elevation? It means we can put MFA on, for example, let's say you log into a server and you have MFA, now you're on the server. And so best example, hacker gets access because they got domain admin credentials, they got access to that server, or they got credentials, right? And they want to be able to shut down IIS or shut down Apache on Linux or vice versa, shut down something because that's what they do. They want to be able to install, shut it down, change the code, and do something crazy, right? Well, now we can actually say if somebody runs sudo systemctl shutdown, guess what? It's no longer just a password. Now you have to provide MFA. Or if somebody wants to do Windows firewall and change ports, we provide MFA on that. So now we have MFA from every single perspective. And you control the policy. It's not like, oh, it's on everything and it's going to be annoying. No, it's not going to be annoying. It's going to be very easily, you decide which applications are critical to you, and you apply MFA to those applications. And again, so what if we have an engineer who needs access into an environment, but they don't usually work on it? Because now you've locked everything down, right? You provided zero trust, which means nobody has access to anything. So we have this technology called just-in-time, which is part of the least privilege use case. And what that means actually is that everybody will be zero trusted. Basically means we will no longer create admin accounts. yes, you will still have to have an admin account to install applications. But as soon as you use it, you lock the credentials in the vault, and your standard users will only be standard users. So once a standard user logs into the Linux or the Unix machine, they are always least privilege. But if they need access, for example, to restart certain service, they can restart that service very easily by doing just in time. It's a workflow. They type in the command, or they relaunch the application as administrator, and all of a sudden it's going to create a workflow. It says, you don't have privileges, but if you like privileges, we can create a workflow, send your management, and they'll have to approve it. And for how long would you like that privilege? And that's what that means. So vault solutions sometimes are just not enough, right? Because it's a vault is a shared account. Now all of a sudden we lay a privilege account on it, and we can say, you will have access only for this period of time to run this application on any system, right? We don't care anymore about the system. So we have a few minutes, and I want to make sure that we have some time for questions. Karis, how are we doing with time? Sorry. How are we doing with time? Sorry, I can't see the point.
Yeah, hello, Thomas.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to finish about 6 minutes.
Okay, so let me do one more thing I just want to kind of cover here. So let me talk about, so least privilege. And again, this will be shared with everybody afterwards. So the full presentation will be shared with you. But I want to just mention this really quickly. So platform preview. So platform preview is something new that Delinea is working. And I'm not going to talk about this entire thing, but the Delinea platform is a new product from Delinea since the merger. And it is a single pane of glass where you will be able to have all of your policies. So I talked about a few products, right? I talked about all of these different products, and everybody's thinking, okay, that's a lot of products. How do we manage everything? So this is our first tool. This is our basically where we will be able to have our secrets, remote access, insights, governance, everything kind of a single pane of glass to manage your infrastructure of privileges. And it's a end-to-end visibility. You can change your dynamic privileges, and it's cloud native. So basically means it is a cloud tool. So with that, this is our new product that we've launched beginning of the year. So if anybody wants more details on this, we'll definitely get in contact. And then my least slide, we'll leave the last ones few. But access management, limited privilege access, right? This is the circle of life. With that, I know a lot of people always want to say, I always say, empower security champions, some things to kind of brag about. Some of our customers who already use this product. So just in case you think Delinea is new and people don't use it, some of our customers that said, hey, you can always use our names. Just like to share that. But again, this deck will be presented to you. Right now, if there are any questions, I'm going to change over to that. And we'll leave the last few minutes for questions.
Okay, Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for presentation. And let's go to the questions. We have one from the audience. I will read it loud for you.
Yes.
The question is, what is the good practice? What do you recommend to use on Windows servers, local or AD users when using Delinea PAM?
So I would use, if you're using Delinea PAM, I would use AD users. There's still no 100%, right? Any single time we use AD users, we always have to think about it that we're caching something. So the best solution, if you're thinking about Delinea PAM, that's going to give you the PAM vaulting of rotating passwords and be able to lock all those domain admins. So the way I would do this is I would create a single shared account where the password is rotated. So this way the password is unknown to anybody, and you can only access it when you need to run it. This way, even if something gets hashed, that password is no longer valid.
Okay, thank you. And Thomas, I have a question from my side.
Yes.
As we know that all the new products which comes into organization in case to, for example, increase the security level and the PAM also to reduce the attack surface, how it impacts the ordinary people who are in charge to use the PAM? like IT guys or other people who have privileged accounts. Maybe you can highlight the main benefits that makes everyday life easier with PAM, not just safer, or situations when PAM plays a key role to avoid repetitive work or can even be a time saver for them.
Well, it's definitely all of that. So basically, and every single time here's the best example. Let's say you have to hire 2 new engineers, right? Your first thing that we always have to create is new accounts for them. What do they have access to, right? So for example, when I got hired at Cisco, they gave me a list of accounts where, okay, you need to log in here, you need to log in there, this password's for this password's for that. But is that too much time consuming, right? Sometimes you hire already veteran, skilled engineers and you want them to start working right away. Because yes, time is money, right? Time is basically. So if you have to show them how and which systems. Now imagine having a central location for all of it, and they only have one AD account to log into your secret server. And in there, inside a folder, they have a list of all the systems with passwords and everything already populated and rotated and locked. Then how much easier is your thing? All you have to do is tell them one thing. Log into secret server, here's the URL, use your domain and your MFA, and all of a sudden you can start working. You can start making your database changes, whatever you need to do. So now you're saving time because now you're onboarding and everything. So you're easier for every corporation to make life easier for all the engineers, for everybody else. And that's just the simplest solution. There's many more that I can come up with.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. And the last one, what would you recommend to organizations who is struggling with decision to implement a PAM solution and see it as a non-priority in terms of company cybersecurity? How much time do they have to make a right decision?
So that's the beauty about how Delinea does it, right? One thing I kept talking about is easy, seamless, right? We are a software company. So if anybody's questioning, do I need it? The answer is right there in front of you. If you're already questioning it, means you're already thinking about it. The answer should be PAM solution is going to help me. Why? Compliance, cybersecurity insurance, all those things, they're moving towards that we're going to need PAM. We're going to need some sort of a vault. So if you're already questioning this, your answer is right there. But the second thing is that if you are, I think if you even compare all the entire market vendors, if you compare everybody, one of the things about Delinea is that POCs run shorter because of the ease of deployment, the discovery, the integrations, all of those things, they make life easier. We don't need a system it's going to take us 2 months to integrate. We need a system that's going to be able to start running and we can start working right away. Again, right? We don't want to spend time on trainings. We don't want to spend time on all of that, or basically, as I used to call it, wasting time and looking at numbers. We want to be able to have results right away.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. And
You're welcome.
I see that we are out of time on the questions. Thank you for the great presentation. And
right. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Ačiū visiems, kurie prisijungėte ir išklausėte. Noriu priminti ir pakviesti po webinaro atsakyti pateiktą klausimyną ir sekti Blue Bridge naujienas dėl tolimesnių renginių. Gražios dienos visiems.